Guys, well, let me just kind of break the bad news to you first. We couldn't get Tom and Greg for this, so you'll have to make do with Tom and Jer for this because now it's time for us to fuck off from a galaxy far, far away and move into the boardroom instead. And my colleague joining me here to discuss it, I'm being very formal because he's been very formal here. He's suited up, especially for the occasion, very boardroom friendly. It is
What can
none
I say?
other than Tom Pot of the Pop Cult Pod on to talk about Succession. Tom, delighted to have you. Welcome to page
Thank,
180.
thank you.
Loving the suit. How are
Delighted to be
you
here.
feeling? Are you feeling very official? Feeling very ready
You
to
know, I
to
mean, they say
present? Give it.
dress for the job you want, and like the way Succession is going, everyone's getting fired. I'm going for that position in Waystar Royco. I'm looking for a golden parachute out of this, man. I'm so damn ready.
Amazing, amazing. I've been dying to talk about Succession with you for the past few weeks, so cannot wait to break it down the past few
For sure.
episodes. It looks like from this week we're going to get an absolute belter. But before we get into this week's episode, how are you enjoying season 4 so far in terms of like, how do you think the episodes are going? Obviously, we had the big Logan Roy's death. And obviously, by the way, guys, just to caveat this, it is not a spoiler free zone so far. It's not a spoiler friendly zone. If you haven't seen the latest episode, and that's all obviously we're going to talk about up to because we don't know anything more than you guys do. But like, yeah, be warned, you're going to get spoilers from here on out. So watch the episode beforehand if you haven't already. But obviously, look, the big headline from this is we're reacting to Logan Roy's death. The kids still reeling, the audience still reeling, especially with him coming back this week for a cameo beyond the grave. But how is season 4 settling with you so far?
So far, I'm really liking season 4. It is an interesting one. It kind of feels like it was such a slow build at the start of the season, and we weren't really sure where it was going to go. It was like, are they going to form the new company? And then all of a sudden, Logan's dead, and it was like, oh well, the whole show just totally fucking changed. And again, it kind of makes sense because like this is the season where they have to actually deliver on the promise the show has had the whole time. It's Succession. Eventually, Logan has to kick the bucket and see who comes here. And I love how it's a messy kind of season in that even though it's been building for a long time of who could be the head of the company after he's gone, he died at like the worst time because no one has any clear idea of who's going to take the reins. But I feel like the dynamic between the siblings, like they were kind of very united at the start of the season. We're getting the fractures, and I think it's really fascinating to watch, especially at the midpoint of the season. Now it's really, really starting to get hooks into me.
Yeah, I love it. Do you know what I love as well about this season? And I agree. It was an amazing fake out because even in the episode where Logan died, it was so well done because we're kind of we're trying to get stuck into the meat. We're like, right, how are they going to get rid of Jerry? Like, I was coming up with conspiracy theories, and I still do feel that way. Like, for example, I think he didn't really want Roman back in with him. He just wanted to
Hmm.
cause a split between the kids. So he knew that, like, having Roy kind of get rid of Jerry will kind of lead to that and so on. And we're in that mindset and thinking, and then all of a sudden this bomb drops. And what I love about it is, especially for a HBO show, we don't see these kind of major happenings. We don't see these character deaths happen. It's very much like the status quo. Like there are shows like Game of Thrones or Lost, like epic shows, which kind of trade in these big box office moments that get the world talking, usually kind of emotional or shocking deaths of big characters. But these can kind of come at a cost too. Like, so for example, as amazing as it might be to lose Tywin Lannister, you also lose Charles Dance and you lose a big part of your show. And that changes
Yeah.
the shape of the show significantly. And kind of when you look at, say, Game of Thrones or Lost, by the end point of it, it's then it can sometimes be unrecognizable from the show that you actually fell in love with, and that can kind of weaken things. What makes Succession great is every week it makes us feel like it's moving mountains, and it actually moves very little. The board pretty much stays the same. The kids are still idiots. Logan's still a legend. Logan's still in charge, and that's the way it's going to be forever and ever. But even when he died, a week later they're back to the status quo because that's just like Marsha's welcoming everyone into the home. Even everyone's like, wait, that is weirdly normal. But even then, like even from beyond the grave, Kendall is still trying to kill his father when he's already dead. It's like The Simpsons, which can kind of run for 3 decades and everyone not age a day because it'll just be the exact same scenarios next week. Um, because again, like what The Simpsons and Succession understand is if they did, it wouldn't be the same show. But also, like Jesse Armstrong and the Succession team, they kind of know the show that we love, and they know just to keep feeding us that while also kind of paying service to their HBO taskmasters. But unlike The Simpsons, they have the good grace to get off the wheel while it's still spinning. So kind of the best of both worlds. So I'm a big fan of season 4 and loving it, and I can't wait to kind of break it down episode by episode. But what we'll do is we're going to get into the episode.
I think I just want to say as well, on the Death Note, I had a very weird experience with the Logan death, because as soon as I kind of found out I was going to do this, I was like, okay, I should actually rewatch the whole show leading up to this. And because of that, season 4 had started before. So I knew there was something big coming in episode 3, and I kind of picked up from cultural osmosis because everyone was talking about it. Yeah. So I was like, okay, Logan's probably going to die. And in my head, from the little chunks I'd seen out there, I had it in my head that there was going to be a massive helicopter explosion that wiped out half the cast. And I was like, that doesn't seem like it suits the show at all, actually. And I was waiting. I was like, oh, something weird is going to happen. And it was just, Logan's dead. Oh, okay, right. Okay, then. A phone call, that'll do. Fine, okay. That actually makes more sense. This is why I'm not a writer.
But also that's how it happens, you know what I mean? And I think that like that episode broke me in several ways, and I hate Logan Roy, and a lot of us do. He's a monster, like, but at the same time, the realism of it and how we've all kind of been in a scenario like that, or we've all feared a scenario like that as well. And it was just played so real, and it's just great actors being allowed to cook. But even the fact that they made room for humor and all the things we like about Succession in there, like, it was just great. But yeah, no, let's talk about the most recent episode, because we probably do an hour on episode 3 alone. We will break down the episode, but first, what we're gonna do, like we do with all TV shows, is we're gonna put you back in the mind frame of the episode. We're gonna do an alt recap of the show, and obviously spoilers to come. And guys, we started off the latest episode with the news that Logan Roy lives. Well, unfortunately for Waystar shareholders, only in the form of a pre-recorded psychopathic ad copy for new elderly death camp product, Living Plus, that Roman and Kendall are determined to launch against Matson's wishes. Shiv immediately sees through the CE Bros' attempt to tank the deal and calls them out, and they react exactly like their mental age equivalents do when caught by mommy, an embarrassed apology and asking for a hug so they can feel better. Tom interrupts Shiv's scheduled grief to give her an unscheduled discussing brother Wamsgasm. Yes, I did say the word Wamsgasm. I regret nothing. A man who responds to career success by sending unsolicited dick pics to co-workers. We learned that Roman responds to grief by firing some of those exact same co-workers, as he gives both Jerry and studio executive Joy the boot for not respecting his authority. Kendall, meanwhile, attempting to complete the set of 2 for 2 CE Bros' worst second days on the job in history, sets unrealistic goals about building homes on timelines that would even make Fine Gael say, come on, man, that's just not realistic. He delegates to Greg to have Logan's speech edited to promise Living Plus will double the value of the parks, and bullies poor Pete the numbers guy into saying it's theoretically possible. I think his entire master plan seems to be do a good business thing, then profit. Everyone, absolutely everyone, is ready to jump ship on Kendall. Roman decides declines to be the goose to his maverick. Carl chews him out like he was a hooker who changed her rates mid-session, while Mattson is tweeting and deleting Nazi jokes. But just as it looks like Kendall is ready to go full L to the OG with tiny Wu-Tang, alternating on stage between talking to the teleprompter and his dead father, Kendall somehow pulls a victory from the jaws of defeat, and does not terribly. It's not the worst thing in the world, which everyone expected, so I guess that's a win. Roman is pissed and storms home. Shiv is in a worse situation. She looks like she's back with Tom, and Kendall gets to enjoy being in water for probably the first time of his life. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was the latest episode of Succession Living Plus. Tom, I want to get your thoughts coming off the 5th episode in the final season. Living Plus, how did this sit with you?
I thought this was an excellent episode. I thought it was good because, like, the week beforehand, it was almost like we're kind of settling into the post-Logan world. Almost like a bit of false hope last week. It was almost like, man, they could actually pull this off. There was like a few moments where it was like Roman actually looked like he might have a pair of balls, and Kendall kind of looked like the killer that his dad always wanted him to be. And then Shiv was kind of having a bit of finesse. I was like, wow, this might actually work. And this week it was like, oh God, they're so screwed. They don't know what they're doing. Everyone kind of showed maybe their worst self. And I think it's kind of a case in this episode where we saw the people who are definitely don't have what it takes. And there's a bit of promise. Kendall and Shiv, it's like there's promise, but I think there's also a lot of dark clouds ahead where it feels like maybe none of the kids should take over this company. It's certainly looking like that, but I thought it was an excellent episode. It did that thing that I think all great Succession episodes do as well, where like it felt like a dark mirror up to what actually happens in politics and media. Like looking at that press conference, I was like, oh, I've seen so many of these awful press conferences, and like the whole dead dad puppet act. I was like, I'm pretty sure I've seen something like this.
Yeah.
A CGI Walt Disney or like a shareholder thing, and I'm like, God, that's not even a joke. That's actually what happens, and that makes it a little bit more upsetting, but still pretty funny.
Yeah, exactly. I thought they nailed it. I thought, yeah, it was a great episode and just great to see. Like, because again, it's no twist that like the kids aren't ready. Like again, Logan literally, oh, in the first scene of this episode, Logan is like behind their backs, he's just like, you're worse than my idiot kids. Like they are the idiot kids, and we know that. But it was amazing and so satisfying to see their sheer incompetence in full flourish. And it was like, oh my god, this is so bad. It was director Lorraine Scafarius. She completed what she calls the Kendall trilogy. With this, she did actually Too Much Birthday last year, which is an all-timer Succession episode, and you kind of got the same vibes. It did feel very Kendall heavy. It felt like the Kendall episode, and we're all just waiting for. We're like, it's happening. It's gonna be the worst thing,
Yeah.
and then everyone's jumping off ship. So I really liked the twist. Now again, we'll talk about it. We'll get to Power Rankings shortly, but I don't know if it's the win that everyone's representing it to be. I don't know if it's kind of because again, it's all based on a house of lies. But also as well, I thought this did so well because it was a move to pieces episode, but also brilliant for us, even in the final season, to see what a shit show the company is and really sets up kind of where we're going to go. Because again, Mattson is very omnipresent in the background, but also now after last week and the blood revelation, we know that Mattson himself is an absolute wild card as well, and maybe not fit to run this landscape. So everything is pointing towards absolute shit show, and I think that's where we wanted to go before the end. We mentioned it there, power rankings. And we won't kind of go into like getting into the 1 to 10 of it all. We'll just kind of give like a kind of high level view. Who are the big movers in your power rankings this week? Who's kind of top of the board? Who's bottom of the board? Like, was there any kind of big movers and shakers for you in your Succession power rankings?
I mean, the person who lost the most, I'd say, would have to be Roman. Roman, like, kind of really showed his arse this week, and like, oh, he is actually just that kind of pathetic, wormy character. And again, especially because he had that big moment last week where he called out like Lucas Moodysson, like it was our Mattson, and Lucas Moodysson's the director, sorry, Lucas Mattson. It was like he really isn't ready. That was like coming from a grieving standpoint more than a business mindset that he had then, you know. And this is a character that is just going towards self-destruction. I think they're still not fully there with the grieving. Like it was a very uncomfortable moment in this episode where the head of the studio was trying to offer condolences. He was like, "No, it's the condolences full, belly full." I think he's just still has a lot of internal kind of strife, and again, you also have the kind of the sword of Damocles over his head from Jerry. Well, his sword, the dick pics are like still kind of the whole Chekhov gun here. It seems like is definitely going to play out, and I think on that note, I mean, someone who went up in the rankings, I think like the old guard. I think what's been great is that they always kind of seem like hanger-ons and yes men when Logan was around, and now that Logan's dead, they really kind of come into it. I mean, like Carol and Frank this year, I like the new. I fucking love them. And that one moment, like I love like that one where Carl just gives a speech and he manages to say like the meanest things to Kendall before he goes on to stage, but he does it with such a smile, like such a sweet voice that you're like, oh shit, he's actually got teeth behind that grin. Like aside from that, I mean, who went up and down? Greg has plummeted this season. I used to like Greg, and I never should have liked Greg. But this week he's just such like when he's like he literally became like Tom, in the early seasons where Tom was just like seemed like a kind of normal guy here, and then he would deal with a lower ranking person, and it was like, oh, he's a piece of shit like the rest of them. Where he was like, okay, Mr. Snippy Snap. And even then, he can't even do that with conviction. I mean, aside from that,
Please
Kendall
don't get me
kind
in
of went
trouble.
up minorly, maybe. I know, like he's such a sniveling coward now. I'm so disappointed. He was like the everyman. He was like the point of view character. We're like, oh, look at this normal person. And now we're like, oh god, he's the worst.
Yeah.
Absolute worst.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, Greg is a piece of shit. Like what kind of what solidified, and I'm not mad at Greg, I'm just disappointed in him. You know what I mean? It's like it's like, but also there is kind of a circle there. There's a circular nature there because obviously that was how he was treated by Tom, and it is a case where, you know, people who get bullied end up becoming bullies, and there is an element to that, but not to excuse kind of what he is. Where I really turned against Greg, and I still really enjoy watching him as a character. Like, it's an absolute amazing performance, but like, where it was when Kerry dropped the bag of stuff and Greg is like, oh, here come the waterworks, and openly mocking
Yeah.
a grieving person just because he saw an advantageous thing there. And it's like, she can hear you, dude, you absolute shriveling scumbag. Like, so yeah, Greg is really dropped down in my estimation, but I have to give him respect. He's really good at hanging in there. He is so good. Like, even the kids are actively calling him a cockroach. They're literally at the start of the season like, do not touch me. And yet there he is, still somehow in their corporation, still getting dirt on everyone, still finding out where bodies are buried, and still in the halls of power somehow, despite being so incompetent.
He may run the company, to be honest, the way things are going. He seems to somehow that just fail upwards the whole time. So like, if he is at the end of this, he might be running the company, and we all just be like, okay, he's a piece of shit. Fair enough, it makes sense.
Yeah, it's like it's like the way, like, at the end, spoilers from Lost for anyone, it's enough time has passed. It's like Hurley running the island in the end. It's like, okay, that just kind of fell into your hands because you're the only one who was there. Like, so, except Greg is obviously a piece of shit. For me, there are two people dominating this season, and they're top of the rankings: Shiv, Tom. They are absolutely bossing it this season. Shiv playing both sides. She actually gets it. I love the scene where she called the guys out. The clip that we played before this, where she called the guys out, like in the room, where she's like, "I know you. What the fuck is happening?" And she actually seemed like Logan. She held the power in the room, and you could see Kendall and Roman shriveling like they did with Logan. And there is a thing where, like, even all the actors say it, where it's like Shiv is the most like Logan out of the kids, and you could see it there.
On that note, there's a really interesting shot in that boardroom of behind Shiv's back, and it mirrors the opening titles of I think the first season, which is behind Logan's back.
Right.
So they're that she's the new Logan, but also like she doesn't have like the kind of corporate experience to a certain degree. She has like bits and pieces, but Tom does.
Yeah.
So it's kind of thing of, if they were to come together, we'd have like a proper power couple here, and it's, I don't know, it's weird. It's I'm not going to say it's becoming a relationship drama in its last season, but there is that kind of element to it that, you know, there's a baby on the way, you know, and again, in the corporate world, someone who is possibly going up in the company also being pregnant, that could work against her as well, which is kind of fucked up.
Yeah.
Like,
it is a
there's
very
nothing out of bounds in this
patriarchal.
show, which is kind of
It's a
weird.
very patriarchal company. Oh no, they say the quiet part loud. Like, at one stage as she was leaving the room, Kendall shouted at her, "You've got all the right lady parts. That's the only reason why you're here." You know what I mean? Like, they're not quiet about this. It is very much a man's world, unfortunately. But, you know, there would be a delicious irony to Shiv ending up on top, because again, it's just something that no one had in mind. Kendall, on the face of it, you might say he had a good week. For me, he felt like Elizabeth Holmes here, but like just making false promises to pop a share price. This feels like something that, if this feels like something that's going to land him in prison, like this, I was looking at this going, this is not a win. What are people talking about? Like, why are people saying that? Like, literally, the most he had was not terrible. Jerry, I like it. And actually, you're making me rethink my thoughts on Jerry. I thought Jerry went down here by kind of overstepping, by kind of treating Roman like the dog to a heel that she'd always had, like bringing him to her heel like she was always able to. And it's like, he's now your boss, and you need to be careful with that. As soon as she walked in, like, "Roman, I need to talk to you," I'm like, and it's not that I saw that scene coming, but I'm like, you can't talk to your boss that way. That's dangerous. Like, and that's what happened. But you also made a great point. She has the trump card, and he's like, Roman cannot, like, as much as Roman can't fire Joy, he definitely can't fire Jerry. Roman, and I feel awful for this, he plummeted right to the bottom of the list. And like, this is it, like, because again, there's a scene where there's a possibility that the kids all end up in prison at the end of this, or end up absolutely disgraced. I don't think it's going to be they all go to jail. Like, I think it's going to be more like Game of Thrones, where everyone just goes their own way, and they all have their own individual potential spin-offs there. But Roman is heading towards Disgraceville very, very soon. It's bad. Matson also had a really tough week, tweeting out Nazi symbology, being absolute, even if Shiv didn't mean to play him, she did. And again, Shiv coming out on top. So Shiv and Tom absolutely bossing it. Tom, no matter where he is, no matter how bad a situation looks, he manages to hang in there. Carl, I think for me, took a massive L just by talking shit to Kendall. Carl, the character in terms of my enjoyment of him this season, is amazing. Like the speech to Tom, the devastating speech where it's like, you, my friend, are well and truly fucked as a friend. It was brilliant. But again, now he's made an enemy in Kendall, and then Kendall's power instantly increased exponentially. So after the speech went well, so you had Carl in the background kind of having to be like, oh yay, long live the king, special. He was calling him special, and Kendall's like, we've got a special. So yeah,
Oh God, yeah.
it's very bad. So like, Carl is not in a good place now. Let's talk about Shiv and Tom. Is this a comeback? Because again, like, or should Tom be looking over his shoulder for Matsson? Matsson has eyes for Shiv. I don't think there's any two ways about it. Again, like, even if it's just kind of trying to play her, but I do think, obviously, I don't know if he's in love with her or anything crazy like that. I think it's more a case of he's a child and he's got these like little alpha dog rivals in Roman and Kendall, and he's like, it'd be really funny if I banged your sister. I think that's the emotional maturity level of Matsson. But he does have eyes for Shiv. Do you think Shiv this week committed to being back for Tom? Where do you see? Do you think she's kind of got power couple goals in her head, or how's this kind of feeling for you?
It's tough. I mean, you kind of nailed it there in one. I mean, it's that quote from It's Always Sunny, I'm playing both sides, so I always end up on top. Like, and it's tough. Like, I can see right now, I think she's hedging her bets. It wouldn't surprise me if by the end of the show she kind of stabbed Tom in the back as revenge and ran the company with Matsson's help. You know, I mean, her name is Shiv. She's gonna stab someone in the back. Like, come on, let's be honest. Okay, it's right there, folks.
I mean, that is all along.
It's like it's right there in the vase. You know, people are gonna be like, "Oh wow, she actually stabbed someone in the back." Oh, did she? You know, but like, I don't know. It's almost too early to tell. But I don't think she cares for Tom. I just don't believe it. I think she's maybe a bit worried with the baby on the way, and I think maybe it's coming from that, or she's trying to maybe get a bit Tom on her side in case he needs him. But I don't think it's genuine love. I'm just not buying it.
In my youth, I was a man who on occasion frequented a toxic relationship with people who kind of would also enjoy those kind of situations. And there got a point when a relationship got so toxic that it became about one-upping each other and playing games with each other and stuff like that. And it's like, you're not trying to get the person because you like them, you're trying to win. And that's very much how I think Tom still has feelings for Shiv. I think he always has loved her. Yeah. I think he just kind of took a stab because he felt like she didn't love him and he needed to do something for himself. And that's what kind of motivated him turning on her at the end of season 3. But I think he is very genuine in a lot of what he says. I think she is in that mode where she cannot get past it. Even there was that mode where he's looking at her going, I want this back. And you saw her kind of like want to relent because she's in a difficult situation and she's remembering how Tom got her out of a difficult situation that we don't know anything more of. We just know that about them. And she's kind of trying to relent, but then she looks at him and she's like, you can't betray me. And I'm like, I have had that look from women before. I'm like, I'm going to fuck you up and I'm never going to forget this. That is the look she's given Tom, and I don't think she can forgive him. So yeah, I would be very, very worried if I was Tom. But I think only good things are happening for Shiv. But again, she's a Roy, and what have we known about Shiv? Anytime any of the Roys seem to have things in hand, they find unique and amazingly entertaining ways of fucking it all up. So who knows? Speaking of which, let's talk about Roman. We've seen Roman get out of sending dick pics meant for non-consenting co-workers to his dad. But is he getting out of this legal trouble, or is he squarely fucked now after the firing spree? Jerry, Joy, doing it literally because they just said the wrong thing to him and he realized he was able to fire people. The real world doesn't work that way, or does it if you're the super rich? How we feel about Roman?
He's done. He's cooked. Like it seems like something is going to wrong and there's so many options for things to go wrong. I don't see any upside for him. Like, I think as well, like at the end of the episode, we had Kendall sending him that altered video message of his dad, and he was just listening to it over and over again. And I think that was very much a clear sign from Kendall, like, haha, yeah, this is dad saying, you know, you fucked up or whatever. I think he was very much saying, like, yeah, you're not able to do this. So like pretty much everyone around him is like, you shouldn't be here, you can't do this. And then you have the whole dick pic situation that I think is absolutely going to explode in his face. I think that's kind of the thing that for a while they were kind of hoping people kind of forget. Like, it was because it happened at the end of the third season. A lot has happened since then. I think it's kind of like, yeah, it's going to come back up straight away now. I think that's why Jerry has been kind of less of a presence up until this kind of episode, like having this direct scene, because there was kind of that moment on the yacht as well around the time when Logan died, and they kind of just sidled past each other. And now it's like, yeah, now they're in a room together. They're going to be in a room together if this is going ahead. Chances are she's going to out him, or he's going to have to out himself from the company real fast. But yeah, he has no future in this company. He's just not going to last. I don't know what that means for like the person outside of like the business. I don't see a happy ending for him in general. I just feel like, I don't know. I don't see any kind of real ending in sight for him in general. I don't think it's going to end well though.
Yeah, I love that read of the end scene. I haven't seen or heard that anywhere where he's looking at it and he's kind of fueling those doubts that you can't do this. He knows he's fucked up. He knows he's done wrong. He knows he's fueled by emotion and grief. And again, that has been what's been fueling Roman. Kieran Culkin, for me, has been the star in terms of acting this season. Some of the choices he makes, the little subtle choices he makes, like even when you kind of say that, it just enhances this choice. Even to hold the phone to his ear, that wasn't the direction that was given to him. I was listening to the official Succession podcast, and that was just something that he did on the fly, and an amazing choice, because again, he's like trying to seek comfort in hearing his father's voice, but then also, yes, it's fueling that belief that he knew his father never had, and he's almost getting comfort. And that might seem strange, but again, you have to remember that Roman is a victim of abuse, both mental and physical, and we've learned that about it, especially when it comes to Logan. And abuse victims like that have that kind of mentality where they're almost comforted by their abuse because that was what they learned love was. And that's incredible. I love that read. That's an absolutely fantastic observation. Kendall, for me, again, celebrating a W, getting to finally enjoy a bit of water, because it's been a pretty traumatic experience for him any time he's been in the water beforehand on this show. But again, it feels like a house of cards. There was a lot of great Kendallisms this week. I just took down some. I'll always, like, every time I'm kind of thinking about a recap in Succession, I always have to just write down some Kendall quotes. So for me, it's like infinite brain box, got up our velocity, break the logjam, or the new space cowboys in town. Amazing Kendall stuff here. And also as well, what I love about it is stuff that Jeremy Strong probably said. That probably wasn't on the page. That's just Jeremy Strong speaking how he thinks normal people speak. What was your kind of favorite? Because this is a big Kendall moment. What was your favorite Kendallism this week? Was it kind of the speaking to the teleprompter, speaking to his dad? What was your kind of what moment resonated most with Kendall from you? Because there was a lot. It was a Kendall heavy show.
I do want to just come back before I go on to Kendall, and again, this is something that kind of only dawned on me now, and I don't know, is there anything here? But again, hey, I'm hedging all my bets on names. I heard Shiv is going to backstab someone. Roman, Romulus. And Romulus and Remus are the two brothers. And basically, if you go by Roman mythology, Romulus killed Remus. So I wonder if Roman's going to try to Kendall out with him if he gets kicked out of the company. Ooh. I don't know if there's anything, because they use it as a triumphant moment at the end of the last season where like he opened up to his siblings of, I killed this kid, and they were like, hey, it's okay. But that's also potential dirt in the world of Succession.
Yeah. Very true.
And it's only those two that know it. I don't know. That might be nothing, but that just popped into my head there. Where I was like, I'm just throwing as much shit against the wall, so eventually I can say I was right.
So way to go. Play the numbers.
That's it. Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, I think just that whole last press conference was just gorgeous. Everything about it. I loved, like, because, and again, it's so pulled from reality. Like the jumpsuit he was wearing. Like, I think, is it Musk or Bezos had exactly that kind of jumpsuit when they went into space? It's the kind of like cool, but also so terribly uncool costume he's wearing. Shout out to the costume designer for this. He's wearing the ATN thing, big red thing across his armband. And now, when you think of someone wearing a big black jacket and a red armband across them, Nazi is what you're thinking. Yeah. So great choice with ATN there, But yeah, I think it was just amazing because it was that thing where we all could see through how much nonsense it was, and it did feel like a win. Like, even when we did get the whole, was it Mac Fry, whatever the tweet was, it was that thing where like everyone's like, yeah, he deflected that, but really he kind of just fumbled and gave an answer, and everyone was like, yes, he did it. But I was like, did he though? Did he? And yeah, the water symbolism at the end is, I mean, water is like a big thing in every season, and especially with Kendall. And like you compare it to like, there's actually three shots that brought into my head because again, and this is what was really good about we watching the whole thing go on because I'm picking up all these like visuals as I go through. So like season two, the premiere of season two when he's in the rehab, he like it's pretty much the opening shot is him like ducking his head out of the water where he's like actually it's like he's surfaced from the water from all the horrible stuff in the last season, and he's got his head above water. Season three, obviously, when he nearly drowns, his face is face down in the water. Here, he's face up. It's like for the first time, he's in no danger of drowning. But I think that's misplaced confidence on his part. I think he thinks like I'm bulletproof. I mean, it's not. I don't think it's going to go well because he didn't say anything really. And again, he pumped the stock price for the moment, but I don't think it's going to last. I mean, like even I think is it Tom says that line when he comes on stage and goes, "How am I meant to follow this?" Like he basically promised him eternal life, like and that's what it was. It was, and that's what I love about this show is like that is I've seen so many of those corporate things, and you're like, I'm way behind this idea, and then you sit there and you think, what was the idea? Like I actually like Living Plus was that thing where it was like, wait, what does it do? Oh, okay, right. I get it now. Yeah, but it took me a while, you know.
It was such like that's the thing. He got credit for it, but again, we're sitting back on this is absolute crap. Like, but that's what these are. That was good from the standpoint, the perspective of one of these things, because what it is like all of these speeches and presentations are kind of these self-professed gurus who we know we're going to end up watching the documentary about one day about how they're absolute con men all along, because that's what all of these companies end up becoming. But then they're kind of just playing to emotion and say, like, if they get away with saying enough emotionally driven bullshit that like makes sense out of stuff, like even Kendall, you're right, you're so right with Kendall's answer. It's like he just at one side starts babbling. He's like, you know, it's a lot like Living Plus in a way, social media, except it's better, and it's like social media in real life, and that's what people want, and it's connection, and it's like you kind of go,
All the
oh, he's
buzzwords.
stuck in a diving, but he's actually saying nothing. There's nothing there. It doesn't give you any insight, but it is actually quality from this the low bar that these presentations set. So next week we're kind of moving on to the election episode. We know that there's a few things at play, like Matsson. It's kind of, it seems to be heading to a fever pitch between his rivalry with the kids. We also know that Jared Mencken has that Trump like direct line to the ATM newsroom, and that looks like a situation that, like, again, they've just dropped it in there, but it's something that we know is going to explode. We know he's also going to be in the show, and it makes sense. It's the middle of the presidential election, like, and it looks like it's going to be election night. So again, like, there's a good chance we see him next week, if not the week after. We also heard Tom suggest that he hosts the night instead of Logan, which if he gives, I just want to see the end of Tom's speech. And you are a member of the ATN family, and you and I am a member of the AFA, so I just want to see more of that, please. What do we think is going to happen next week, though? Where are we feeling like with election night? If you had to kind of just throw a stab in the dark and give some predictions that will no doubt be proven wrong in seconds.
That's a tough one, man. I've no idea where this show is going, to be honest.
How can you?
Like we're in the second half of the show, and it feels like they've only set up the dominoes now.
Yeah.
But like I don't know. I mean, I think this is a point where Matsson is going to either be able to prove or disprove that ATN News is a liability, depending on how the election goes. You know, and it's interesting because obviously the parallels for this show is Rupert Murdoch. Like without a doubt, there was Murdoch a few weeks ago in Vanity Fair, and it was talking about his reaction to the election when Fox News had all this going on.
Yeah.
Which I mean, first of all, great article, definitely worth a read. But the parallels to Succession in that were also amazing. Like Rupert Murdoch's now ex-wife cannot, like, as part of their separation agreement, cannot sell stories to the people who write Succession. And also, there's, by the way, he also has 3 kids, as 2 boys and a girl. So there's like that whole parallel as well. But also, one of the brothers was on the outs, and the other brother whispered to Rupert Murdoch, like, you know, I think he's selling stories to the rise of Succession. Don't trust him. So I kind of think they're going to go full bore here, and it's going to be exactly like what the whole Fox Trump election controversy was going to be. Ooh. But also, I feel like since we're coming into the end game, how much can they really dive into that? But I do think it's really going to be a moment where it's going to help Matsson either get this sale done or it totally fall apart, because I think ATN is going to be really, really changed by what happens with this election. And I think that's kind of what the hook of this whole thing is at the moment.
I think what's going to happen here is the kids are going to do an Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. They're going to do just good enough to get made permanent. And Maatsen has done just enough damage to his capital that I think he's going to fuck everything. Because what they're telling us this season when it comes to Maatsen is all we knew beforehand was genius and like, prodigy and knew his shit and could build big companies and was the future. This season we're learning he is a liability between the tweet that he put out. Then last week, the revelation about blood. His head of comms has like a knife to his throat permanently because of what he's done. And he'd probably be into that, to be fair, by the sounds of things. But like, I think what's going to happen is Maatsen is going to be out. I think next week is going to be another win for the kids, but we have to be very cautious about them winning because I think they have so much stuff that's happening that is actually seems like a win, but is actually burying them deeper with the context that we know that like all Kendall said this week was a load of bullshit and you can't just do that. It's not legal. Like Hugo has a scandal. He's getting done for insider trading. Roman is now going to have lawsuits coming out. So the worst thing that could happen for them is the sale falls apart and they're actually put in control. I feel that is the cliff that we are heading towards at this stage. And I think next week is actually going to be like Maatsen, I think maybe has 1 or 2 episodes left before he either pulls out or has to pull out. Or again, consider like Carolina and Hugo and Carl reacting to the Doderick McFry joke that Maatsen tweeted. They were just like, we need to strategize around this. We need to strategize. This is our acquirer. I think they're going to start coming around to the idea that Kendall could lead us into this bold new world. And again, that is a disaster. We do not want that. So I think this is good. That's where it's going to go. And maybe the win could come in the form of them putting Mencken into the White House and he's their guy. And we know that he's on ATN, but obviously look how that worked out for Fox in the long run. You know what I mean? And we don't have the time to kind of get to the ATN being sued by the election pollsters. But again, we know that it didn't work out well. Before we wrap up, just to get kind of, do you have a favorite quote from this episode?
Do I have a favorite quote? I wrote 2 down. One of them was actually just a very simple one. I just loved when Chip just says, "Boys, you're not good at this."
Yes.
Because it was so blunted to the point, and I was like, just even the use of boys, I was like, "Mwah, chef kiss." And aside from that, I had, if I cringe any harder, I'm not even sure I get that, but I loved it.
Sorry, one more time. You lag towards the end there, just for.
So ahead. Roman had a quote in the episode where he said, "If I cringe any harder, I might become a fossil." And it's the sort of thing where I don't know if I actually fully understand that one, but I'm also like, yeah, I'm going to use that.
Incredible. There were some great ones. Like Greg had a couple of sneaky ones as well, where they're all like, everyone's cringing about like how bad the Logan or the Logan cameo is in the speech, and Greg's in the background like, it's really well edited though.
Yeah.
Or another one that Greg came out with was when Maatsen tweeted, and he's like, he turns to Tom and he's like, this is kind of good for you because your presentation not great, but now nobody's going to be watching. Absolute killer. And then what was it, like Jerry as well was a killer. Like what Roman turns around and he's like, I didn't fire her, I said she was fired to her. And Jerry, amazing, cutting, just turns around and goes, the fuck does that mean? Amazing. Tom, you're scheduling your grief, so cutting. And just, oh yeah, like that is actually pathetic. But for me, my favorite quote of the episode this week was Kendall reacting to Roy telling him that he just fired Jerry, and Kendall just turns around and goes, wait, Shiv's godmother Jerry? And like makes the case against it, and then turns around seconds later in the most Kendall way and goes, I mean, fuck it, bro, why not? You literally just said, and he just goes, drop it in the end zone. It's like, stop, you can't just say fuck it and every decision is right. But amazing stuff. Loved it. Really strong episode. I cannot wait to discuss more of this. In the meantime, Tom, tell people where they can find you and check out your stuff if they're interested in more.
Best place to find me at the moment is on YouTube, Pop Cult Pod, all one word. I've got reviews coming up very soon. I'm going to kick up my review series again for the summer movie season. So hopefully for the next episode we do this, I'll have a Guardians review out. You can also find me on Irish Wrestling Entertainment. We do Top of the Pods, where we do a top 10. We take someone's top 10, smash it up, and put our own rankings on it. There's always episodes of that on their channel as well. Aside from that, social media, Pop Cult Pod, all one word, all over the socials. And yeah, Looking forward to this. The best HBO show since Entourage. I know we're both massive Entourage fans. We were talking about before we came on, Mike. We love Entourage, me and Jar. So that'll be our next podcast, no doubt.
Disgusting brothers out, guys. Anyway, until next week, Tom, thanks for joining us on Page 180. But for now, fuck off.